This video is on law of sines and cosines. This is example 2. When we have a triangle that we have big A, big B, and big C, that means we're going to have little a, little b, and little c. This is potentially a non-right triangle because we do not know the other angle measurements at the moment. We can use law of sines and cosines because we do not know if we can use Pythagorean theorem or trigonometry, which is just basic sine and cosine. But we also are not given a right angle marking, so we are correct in our assumption that this is not a right triangle. So we're going to go into law of sines and cosines. To determine if we need law of sines or cosines, I will make a chart to keep our values organized to determine if we can use law of sines or cosines. So my table has 2 columns because I'm going to have angles and sides. I'm going to have 3 rows because I have A, B, and C. So on the left side, I'm going to write out my angles, which are big A, big B, and big C. And on the right-hand side, I'm going to do my sides, which are little a, little b, and little c. I'm going to fill in the information that I have already in black. So my angles, I have big B. So I'm going to put big B is 44 degrees. I have a 22 here, which is a side length, which is opposite of the big A. So that's little a. So I have 22 here. And then I have a 10, which is a side length, which is opposite the big C, so that's little c. These are the values that we have. There is no way I can figure out the 2 angles at the moment, and there's no way I can figure out the third side using Pythagorean theorem. So I will need to use law of sines and or cosines. Now, if we remember back from law of sines and cosines, to know which one to use, law of sines you use if you have a side and its opposite angle. If you don't have this, you have to use law of cosines. So on this problem, in our chart, none of the angles and sides match up, so we do not have an angle and its opposite side, or a side and its opposite angle. This is the only angle we have. We do not have the side. We have these 2 sides, but we do not have these 2 angles. What that means, if you have to do law of cosines, you want to, and you have an angle already, you want to find that side. So you can do law of sines. So we want to do law of cosines right now for little b. So law of cosines, we're going to do law of cosines, but we're going to be solving for little b. So we're going to use the equation b squared equals a squared plus c squared minus 2ac cosine of big B. So again, these 4 letters right here are all going to be the same. So we're going to have AC, AC. The first letter and the last letter should be the same letter, just one's little, one's the angle. So now we're going to fill this information in. We do not know b, little b, so we're going to put b squared equals a, little a is 22, so we have 22 squared, plus our c is 10, 10 squared, minus 2 times our a was 22, our c was 10, times the cosine of our big B is 44 degrees. This is the only letter that's left in this problem, so we will want to solve for this letter. In order to solve for this letter, we'll end up taking the square root. So we can do all of this in our calculator at one time. So we will take the square root of this, all of that. So in our calculator, we're going to have b is, it's going to be an approximate because we're taking the square root of something. It's going to be the square root of. Now, it also depends on the type of calculator you have. If you have a newer or older calculator, you have to be very careful about your parentheses. So an older calculator that does not extend the radical for you, it's going to open up a set of parentheses automatically. Just leave it there. And now you're going to write everything that you see here inside of here, so including the extra parentheses. So I have parentheses, 22 parentheses squared, plus parentheses, 10 parentheses squared, minus 2 parentheses 22 parentheses parentheses 10 parentheses cosine parentheses 44 parentheses. But then I want to make sure I close my original parentheses set, which will close the radical. So this is in case you have an older calculator. So if I turn on calculator, I'm going to make sure my calculator is in degree mode. So I go to mode, and as you can see, it's not in degree. So I'm going to go change it into degree mode. Second, quit, and I'm going to type this in as I see it. So I'm going to type it in as the light blue, which is that square root symbol. So my square root symbol came up with a parenthesis on its own, and it will not extend it. So this is an older calculator. So I have my first parenthesis, now I need my second parenthesis. So parenthesis 22 parenthesis squared plus parenthesis 10 parenthesis squared minus 2 parenthesis 22 parenthesis parenthesis 10 parenthesis cosine of 44 parenthesis, and then I have to close out my parenthesis to get the radical finished. Now I'm going to press enter. Round to the nearest tenth is 16 and 4/10. 16 and 4/10. So we end up getting B is approximately 16 and 4/10. So I can put that in my chart. 16 and 4/10. So now that we have a side and its opposite angle, we can go into law of sines. So to go into law of sines, we would use sine of big B and over little b. So then we can find the angles A or C. So if we go into law of sines, I have to use the information that I have the angle and its opposite side. So I have sine of 44 over 16 and 4/10 equals. Now I'm going to go ahead and solve for angle A just because it's on top. But once we get our answers, we have to make sure that it does create a triangle, meaning your smallest side is across from your smallest angle, biggest side is across from the biggest angle, and that the sides, the two smaller sides, so 10 plus 16 and 4/10 is bigger than 22. So we do know that this will create a triangle. The sides will create a triangle, but will the angles match up? So we know the sides are good, but will the angles match up? So let's go ahead and solve for sine of big A, because we don't have that, over little a, which is 22. So I will fix that. That's 22. So again, I'm going to cross multiply. Going to have 22 sine of 44 is equal to 16 and 4/10 sine of A. Now we will have to divide by 16 and 4/10, but because we're finding an angle, I'm going to have to do the inverse sine of the entire thing. I have to do the inverse sine of the entire thing so I can get A by itself, because I'm finding the angle. So I know that big A will be approximately. Okay, so I'm going to write out how we're going to write it in the calculator. We're going to do sine inverse, because we're going to end up solving for A. We will divide the left side by 16 and 4/10. So we'll have 22 sine of 44, close parentheses, divided by 16 and 4/10, close parentheses. So this just went over here. So all of this is right here. So when we divide by 16 and 4/10, this is all together. But to finish it, to solve for A, I'm going to have to take the inverse to be able to find the angle. So I just type this all in my calculator at one time so that I don't have to do multiple different steps and round it and round it and round it again. The more rounding you do, the more inaccurate your answer will be. So I'm going to do sine inverse, so I have to do second sine. Now I'm going to type in 22 sine of 44, close parentheses, divided by 16 and 4/10, close parentheses, enter. So I get angle A is approximately 68 and 7/10. So again, angle A is approximately 68 and 7/10 degrees. So if I put that in my chart, 68 and 7/10 degree. So if I have two angles, I can find the third just by knowing that 180 degrees. So if I know I have angle B is 44, angle A is 68 and 7/10. I have those two angles at the moment. I need 180. So I take 180 minus 112 and 7/10. And I get angle C to be approximately 67 and 3/10. So now what we need to do is check to see, we know that the sides will create a triangle, but do the angles match with the sides? So our angles go with the smallest angle first. Our smallest angle is 44 degrees. So then it needs to match with the smallest side. So coming over here, our smallest side is 10. So these do not match. These do not match. So this is not correct. It doesn't mean that the problem doesn't work. It means that we ended up picking the wrong angle to solve for. We had to use law of cosines to get the 16 and 4/10. Our sides are good. It's the angles that are mixed up. The 44 is good because that was given to us. So instead of doing sine of A over 22, I should have used sine of C over 10 and found angle C first. So this is what we call an ambiguous case. This does not work. This is an ambiguous case. Because there are multiple ways to have done this, but there's only one answer that we should get. So the B value, the side, was good. This part was good because our law of cosines is good. It was the law of sines when we used it. This was not good. So this is what we need to change. This is what we need to change. It should not have been the sine of A. So we do not want that. So we're going to redo our law of sines. We're going to keep the sine of 44 over 16 and 4/10. It's going to be equal to, this time instead of sine of A, we're going to do sine of C. Let's find the angle C using law of sines over the length of 10. So again, I'm going to end up having almost the exact same equation because I'm still going to cross multiply, but instead of doing A, I'm doing C. So on here, the number that changed was really the 22. The 22 turned into a 10. So on here, the 22 will turn into a 10. So when I write this out, big C will be approximately, so I'm going to keep the same sine inverse of. From the pink to the purple, I originally had a 22 here, but now I have a 10. So instead of the 22, I'm going to have a 10. Sine of, I still have sine 44. Divided by, I still have the 16 and 4/10. So let's find this value. So this time, it's sine inverse, so second sine, of 10 sine of 44, close parentheses, divided by 16 and 4/10, close parentheses. We get 25 and 1/10. Now that is a completely different angle than what we had from up here. So we have 25 and 1/10 degree. So if we say C is approximately 25 and 1/10 degree, we can make a new chart and see if this will work. So I'm going to fill in my chart again. So I have big A, big B, and big C, little a, little b, and little c. I know I had 44 degrees here, I had 22, I had 10, and I know the B value does in fact work. So that was 16 and 4/10. So now my big C value is 25 and 1/10. So let's find our third angle, which again, we have two of them. So we have 44 plus 25 and 1/10. And we want to take that from 180. 180 minus 69 and 1/10. We get 110 and 9/10. So 110, A is approximately 110 and 9/10 degrees, which is completely different from what we had up here. So let's check to see if this is a triangle. Our smallest angle is big C. So this is our smallest. Our smallest side is little c, so those match. We do our largest angle is big A, and our largest side is little a, so this now works. This one is correct. This is our answer. So we have little b, big C, and big A now. Those are our three answers that we had to find. So again, once you have your values, we didn't do anything wrong. All of the math is correct. The problem is that we ended up picking the wrong angle to solve for. Should have picked 10 because it's the smaller one. If you use law of cosines and then law of sines, you should probably pick the smaller side to find your angle. But whenever you do law of cosines and you do law of sines, you need to double check that your angles are opposite the correct sides.